Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us on a Friday afternoon. My name is Kate Taconic. I teach in the Department of Theology and Religious Studies at the University of San Diego. And along with my colleague, Dr. Mike Williams, I'm also the co-director of a group that's known as the Urgent Challenges Collective. So the collective is a group at USD that works to promote research, teaching, and advocacy and community engagement centered around homelessness and food insecurity here in San Diego. So the event that you've signed up to attend today is part of the end of our Action Week. We've been hosting Homelessness and Food Insecurity Action Week 2020 all week this week with different programs. And this is also the third and final resource fair, housing and food access resource fair event that we're holding this week as well. So the purpose of Action Week was really to find ways for our community to be involved more actively in the issues of homelessness and food insecurity. And the purpose of our resource fair is to connect you with specific community partners who are doing important work in these areas. So today we're very lucky to have two community partners with us, good friends of ours, who will be able to talk to you a little bit about the work that they do, and who will also be able to share some opportunities for students and others at our community to get involved. So good, I'm gonna turn it over to Austin, who's going to say a little bit about the Mulvaney Center, who's also one of our sponsors for today. But just one thing before I do that, as we're going through the presentations at the start of the event today, if you have any questions that you would like our speakers to answer at the end when we'll have some time for Q&A, feel free just to write them in the chat box, or you can private message them to me if you don't want everybody else to see them, if you just want them anonymous, okay? So Austin, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome, thank you, Kate. And just echoing Kate's sentiments, gratitude to everyone for joining on a Friday. I know that's a tall ask, especially during this time where folks are really busy. But it's been a real honor to work with Kate and to work with all of our partners and Mike. And there's been a lot of people involved in this process. So we're really excited just to be joined by some great experts, Brendan and Megan, who I'll introduce here shortly. But just a quick spiel about myself and the center that I work for. So I work as the Associate Director of Student Leadership and Learning at the Mulvaney Center. The full title is the Mulvaney Center for Community Awareness and Social Action. So it's quite a mouthful, but the essence of the work is really just trying to be a bridge between our campus community and all the experts and wisdom and knowledge holders that we have in our community, such as the folks today. So we're lucky to be joined by Megan and Brendan, who work for Father Joe's Village. Megan, who I'll introduce here shortly, and then Brendan Dentino, who's with Yes on Measure A. So first, we're going to have Megan present a little bit about the work that Father Joe's does for our community. And just to give a little bit of context and framing, for those of you who aren't familiar, Father Joe's has been working in San Diego for now 70 years. Began back in 1950, if my math serves me correctly, out of a small chapel in downtown San Diego, but now they house just as much as 2,000 folks a night here in San Diego. So really a large initiative. Father Joe's mission is to prevent and end homelessness one life at a time. And their work is really formed around the core values known as the CREED, which is an acronym that stands for compassion, respect, empathy, empowerment, and dignity. So we're lucky to have Megan Callery from Father Joe's today joining us, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Megan for our presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Austin, for that great intro. That was perfect. So my name is Megan. I head up the events team over here at Father Joe's, which means I work in the development side of things. And so I'm just going to give you a really brief background on myself, and then I'll go into, I have some slides prepared because I didn't think that you wanted to hear me rattle off statistics for 15 minutes. So I got into philanthropy about 10 years ago when I was in college, actually. I worked for my university's annual fund, which is like a unrestricted greatest needs fund that most organizations have. So I started doing that and realized that not only, did I like what I did, that I was actually good at it. And I hadn't, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I came into college. And so I was really excited to kind of find a purpose and a vocation. And now 10 years later, I'm still working in nonprofits, and I worked in all kinds of philanthropic spaces. I've worked in arts and culture, in museums. I've worked in early childhood education. And then finally, I landed in social services here about 2 years ago. So I've been with Father Joe's for a while now. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just so you guys can see what I have prepared. Right. So Austin did a great job of introducing us. We are a homeless services organization, been around 70 years this year. We did start out of a tiny little ministry chapel serving peanut butter sandwiches eventually in the 80s, and now to really what is a comprehensive and integrated service provider. So like he mentioned, everything that we do is centered around the creed. And the important thing that I kind of wanted to stop and point out around the creed is that second E, which is empowerment. We like to say at Father Joe's that we are not a handout, we are a hand up. So we are really dedicated to ending somebody's homelessness permanently, not just providing them a meal, not just providing them a bed, which is really important, but really providing them the tools and the resources that they need to solve their homelessness, to solve the issues that are causing it. So the challenge, San Diego is, whether you're from here or not, I have no doubt that you have witnessed the problem that is homelessness in San Diego. So according to our point in time count, we have about 7,600 people on any given night who are experiencing homelessness. 3,600 of these are unsheltered. And so that is an important distinction, because even when you are in a shelter bed, you are still homeless. So that rolls up into that 7,600 number, but 3,600 people are unsheltered. So no bed, on the street, cold at night. If it's raining, maybe they get a shelter bed because the city opens inclement weather shelters, but they might not. So I think that that's a really staggering number. And when you think about who these people are that are unsheltered and who are homeless, they are kids, they are families, they are veterans, they are vulnerable people. And so, you know, the face of homelessness looks really different than I think what a lot of people tend to kind of place as the face on there. Which brings me to my next slide. So who are the people that we serve? And, you know, what kind of issues are they facing? Again, in just an attempt to break down some myth barriers here, we do deal with folks who are suffering from a mental or behavioral health issue. We do work with folks who have a substance use disorder. We work with a lot of folks who have a long-term disability. That is a huge reason people become homeless. Retirement age as well, fixed income. Anybody who's battling any kind of income issue or has something that precludes them from having a solid income will probably battle homelessness at one point or come up against that barrier. And so again, just kind of a way to get you in the mindset of who it is that we serve. What does homelessness look like in our community? Because it is not ubiquitous. It is a lot of different kinds of folks dealing with an intersection of issues. And so at Father Joe's, we try and make solutions that address everyone's unique needs. So nobody comes to us with the same exact set of problems and issues that we can help them with. And so no one person requires the same set of resources, which requires us to get creative, have like I said, an integrated approach that allows us to offer comprehensive services. We do structure these services into 4 pillars. So meeting basic needs is the first one. You cannot do anything if you are hungry or if you don't have a roof over your head for the night. So that is number 1. You come to us, all right, what can we get you right now? Do you need a roof? Do you need a meal? Do you need to see a doctor because you haven't filled your prescription in a while? Do you need a safe place just to take a shower, just to have a mailbox? And so all of those things we provide, and that includes emergency shelter. Rapid rehousing is a program where it's just meant to get people into apartments as quickly as possible. Again, without addressing the other issues and not having stable income, those folks will fall through the cracks again. So it's really important that we do both. And then the day center and public lunch. The day center is a place where adults can go during the day to hang out. They're not loitering anywhere. That's a huge issue, and people who are experiencing homelessness have a run-in with the lots because they're loitering. So let's just give them a safe place to come. We have mailboxes there. And then our public lunch line, we feed a ton of people per day. And we actually expanded that during COVID because we were finding the food insecurity in our community skyrocketed when places started closing. The second pillar is strengthening self-sufficiency. So this kind of goes into what I've been saying is you have to provide services and tools around all the things that we do. So it's no use putting somebody in an apartment if they don't have any income. Again, they will slip through the cracks. So we offer vocational training. We have a culinary arts program that trains people for careers in the food services. Recently have pivoted that as well, again, due to COVID. So we're really training people on how to do like mass catering. And so they'll actually help out every single day in feeding all of the people that we provide shelter for every night. So it's a really great way to get people this hands-on experience and also make sure everybody is kind of giving back into the same cycle. And then we do have a chaplaincy services program. We started as a Catholic ministry, and though we officially separated from the Catholic Church and are, a nonprofit, we still retain that Catholic identity. And so the chaplaincy services are a really important branch to what we do. Investing in children is our third pillar. So this is something that's really near and dear to my heart, having come from early childhood education. We run a state licensed preschool. And so our preschool, I mean, it's honest, like I'm smiling just thinking about it, because you walk in and you come from this really chaotic place on the streets. If you've ever been down to our downtown facility, or you've been down around Petco Park, which is where our facility is adjacent to, you know that it can be a little bit rough. It can be a little bit chaotic on the streets. And so you walk into this therapeutic childcare center, into this family center, and it's just a sense of calm, and the walls are decorated and there's crafts everywhere, and it just radiates joy and childhood in a way that the streets don't. And so we know that early life on the streets can be really traumatic, and that trauma can have lasting impacts on the kids that we see. So for every child that's in therapeutic childcare with us, we actually, our curriculum works on mitigating that trauma. So it's developed by psychologists and by psychiatrists in conjunction with family therapists to really help strengthen our families, to teach parents how to be parents, if that's what needs to happen, to help families have a place where they can bond. You can't bond on the street. You are totally focused in on survival. And so when a lot of our families come in here, they need a little bit of help knowing how to be a family when you're not in that constant survival mode. And then finally, our last pillar is making health a priority. So we run a village health center. We provide primary care, we provide psychiatry, dental care. We offer mental health and behavioral health services. And then we recently opened a pharmacy as well. And all of this is important, and all of this is great, but the idea is really creating this one place where folks could come, get what they needed without any barriers to entry. We found that people they'd come to the Village Health Center, they'd get prescribed medication, and then they'd never pick it up. They'd never fill their prescription. So we added a pharmacy. We found that parents, couldn't get a job because they had childcare issues. So we added a preschool. People needed help on their resumes, but they didn't have anything to wear to an interview. So we started a career closet. So all of these things that we do are just dedicated to making sure we are removing any barrier to entry that anyone experiencing homelessness might face, which when you start to think about it, it's a lot. It's hard to start over, and it's hard to have nothing, which is what a lot of these people come to us with. So the fun part now, what can you do? So there's a couple different ways to get involved. And normally this would be me talking about all of the awesome volunteer opportunities that we have and come on down to the village. And that looks a little bit different this year, obviously. So we do still have volunteer opportunities at the village. We are still in critical need of volunteers, especially around some of our larger holiday type events. So if that is something that interests you, please feel free to get in touch with me. However, I wanted to give some other options to like what things that you could do on your own, things that you could do while you were socially distancing, and things that you could do while you weren't necessarily even on campus. And so events are a really easy one. All of our events are virtual now, so you can participate wherever you want, from wherever you want, and however you'd like. So on October 7th, we're hosting a great panel discussion on the importance of income and the importance of income in battling homelessness. So kind of what I've just been saying, there's no use getting you into an apartment if you don't have a way to hold down a solid income. So we have a panel of experts who are ready to discuss that, and it should be a really interesting conversation. And then we also have our annual 5K coming up, and normally this is on Thanksgiving Day, so it's never been an opportunity I've been able to present to a lot of the USD students before, but we're really excited because this year is virtual. So you can participate from wherever you would like, from halfway across the country. You can do that if you'd like to. And then you can participate however you'd like. So it's really inclusive this year. We're really excited about that. You can go shopping if you are in the San Diego area. We have thrift stores all over the city. Really cool stuff in there. I love going shopping in there. Really affordable. And every dollar that you spend in there just goes right back into these programs. And then the third thing that you could do, which I thought was important to include, which is advocate. So we're in an election year. We're about to hear about, Measure A and about how important some of these ballot measures are. Look for the ballots, look for the measures, look for the politicians that are making homelessness a priority. In a city like San Diego, where we're the 4th largest homeless population, let's give this a little bit of importance here. I see a lot of people not talking about it. And so I always look for the people that are making this a priority, that have real solutions, that have worked with service providers before. And, I know that we're all geared up for the presidential election, but a lot of this work happens down ballot. It happens at local governments. So, in your own community, in the San Diego community, wherever you're registered to vote, make sure you're doing your research and finding out who is going to help this community the most. So I just wanted to also throw a slide up here with my information. I'm always very available. I love talking to people, if that wasn't clear from how much I've just talked now. But you can always reach out to me. I am very available, and I would love to hear from you. That's my whole spiel.
Thank you so much, Megan. And I'm sure there's probably plenty of questions, so we'll make sure we have some time to kind of ask those as well. It's really amazing to see just how much comprehensive support and care Father Joe's does provide to so many people in San Diego. So no pressure, Brendan. That's a tough act to follow there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think my presentation is just going to be what Megan said. I think that's all I need to mention. No, but I'll go into I'm here. I'm Brendan Dentino, the campaign director for Yes on Measure A, used to be known as Homes for San Diegans. So if you have heard of that or see that name floating around, just know that that's still us, same people, just new name. I'll also disclaim that Measure A is a nonpartisan electoral race. We do have endorsements from the political parties and groups affiliated with political parties. But ballot measures are inherently nonpartisan, and the organization is nonpartisan. So I got to Measure A, a winding path. I actually got to San Diego via the Navy. I was in the Navy here for 5 years. Got into housing right after the Navy, bounced around jobs. I think the through line is a call to service and a belief in acting on the public good. And I feel like Measure A is a perfect place for me to do that for San Diego. And I also believe that much of housing policy is around maintaining and generating wealth and power. I believe that's not right. It should be providing for the public good and acting as a foundation for thriving communities. And that's not just me. I think it's everyone behind Measure A believes in that. So that's kind of the things that are undergirding all of this effort. I do have some slides. I will share my screen. Let's see, present. Okay, Yes on Measure A, tagline, a solution for homelessness. Megan touched on much of kind of why this is needed, so I'll breeze through that, but I'll go through my slides hopefully fairly quickly. So I'm not affiliated or employed by the San Diego Housing Federation. However, the Housing Fed is closely affiliated and probably the spine of the Measure A coalition. And the president and CEO, Stephen Russell of the Housing Fed, has been the leader of the Measure A effort. So the Housing Fed is celebrating its 30th year anniversary this year as the San Diego's voice for affordable housing. And to celebrate the 30th year, their primary effort this year is advocating for Measure A. So what is Measure A? $900 million general obligation bond for affordable and permanent supportive housing. Megan kind of touched on what that is and what that does for people. But I'll just reiterate that the permanent supportive housing is affordable housing accompanied by the supportive services and treatment and care that people need to get and stay housed, the people who are experiencing homelessness. Whereas the affordable housing serves general low-income populations that we have listed here. And often affordable housing, traditional affordable housing, does serve people who are experiencing homelessness, because not everyone experiencing homelessness needs supportive services. They just need an affordable place to live. So the fact that if this is passed, that we would create permanent supportive housing plus the affordable units needed in the city of San Diego, that's why we bill it as a solution for homelessness. And every home constructed with Measure A funds would serve low-income populations. This is what that 0 to 80% AMI means, technical term, but just know that everything created through Measure A would serve those most in need. How is it funded? Probably the second question we get most after what is Measure A. Measure A is a property tax. That's how it would get funded. However, we feel it's an equitable and broad-based enough tax where homeowners and renters experience a modest impact and contribute to the public good. So you see the tax rates in this bar chart, but I think we highlight that for a median homeowner, which is now around $600,000. That's a whole other can of worms, a whole other problem to solve, that a median home is now $600,000. Measure A is not going to solve that. We'll solve that separately. But if Measure A passes, you can see the impact for that homeowner, just $1.50 per month to start and rising to $10. And why that rises is because if the city is authorized to issue this money, it will do so over time. You can't just put $900 million out all at once. There's not enough labor, not enough land, not enough materials to build $900 million worth of housing in a single year. So that's why the tax impact would rise over time. So why is it needed? Megan touched on much of this. These are statistics of homelessness in the city of San Diego. I think what was highlighted before was the county of San Diego. Mm-hmm. This is what is represented in the city. So basically, we've had around 5,000, a population of 5,000 people experiencing homelessness in the city of San Diego for the past 5 years. This is one of Steve, my boss's at the Housing Fed's favorite slides. Loss of NOAA. NOAA is naturally occurring affordable housing. So what Measure A would build would be what's called deed restricted, or by law, it must remain affordable for 55 years. This slide represents how we're losing homes that are naturally affordable, that are not protected by that law governing subsidized affordable housing. The important thing is the blue sections. These are the number of homes available and affordable to very low income households. From 2000 to today, this year, we've lost over 60,000, or just about 60,000 naturally affordable homes for very low income households. And it will get worse 20 years from now. The need is so much greater than what Measure A can provide. But the importance of what Measure A does is that it serves the most vulnerable, the most in need, and the homes that would be created would be not subject to the market forces that are represented in this slide. Like I said, the homes created from Measure A would be permanently affordable for at least 55 years for those most impacted by housing affordability. Another factor often doesn't get talked about in housing and homelessness policy is the lack of wage growth. We talk about number of jobs and economic growth and all this stuff, but you can be growing jobs, but those jobs might not pay enough to afford housing costs. And that's exactly what's happening in San Diego. You don't need to worry about all the numbers, but if you just notice these two bars here, these are the wages needed to afford an apartment or a single family home. Just 3 of the fastest growing jobs can afford those. And if you notice, they're highly specialized, often high education jobs. The other 7 fastest growing jobs are less skilled, less education, and don't even come close to being able to afford the housing costs in San Diego. So the 2,800 units that Measure A would build, plus the 4,700 traditional affordable homes, were not pulled out of thin air. The basis for Measure A is this Community Action Plan on Homelessness, which was unanimously enacted by the City Council last year. This plan calls for 2,800 new permanent supportive homes to end chronic homelessness for those that are currently experiencing homelessness, unsheltered, amongst the unsheltered population. So what was called for in a plan is can be implemented by Measure A, and that's exactly what we're attempting to do. And this plan calls us out explicitly. These bond measures being considered are a critical component to meeting the needs and projected costs for this plan. So in summary of what I just presented, I have one more slide after this, but homelessness has increased as wages have stagnated and affordable housing has been lost or not produced. Ultimately, the solution to homelessness is an affordable home. We need more transitional facilities. We need more services. We need more wage growth. We need all these things, and it needs to happen at the same time. We are playing one part of the housing and homelessness equation in San Diego, and that is filling the gap of the need for permanent affordable homes. That's what Measure A is doing. The Community Action Plan on Homelessness makes clear we need locally generated capital to build these homes, and we need solutions that are commensurate to the scale of the problem. Measure A is just that. So how you can help? You can help us conduct outreach as an intern or volunteer. Election day is November 3rd. Ballots go out in 2 weeks, which is just mind-boggling to me, but people will be voting soon. We have a group of USD students who got involved a few weeks ago. We have a group of UCSD students who are getting involved this week. So there's plenty of opportunities to plug in. If you don't want to spend time on us, that's okay. You can request a yard sign or a window sign if it fits in your window on our website. And of course, register to vote in San Diego and vote Measure A. I put register to vote in San Diego because students are eligible to register where they attend class or where they attend school. If you live in San Diego, I know everyone's virtual now. And of course, I ask for your yes vote, Measure A. If you do want to get involved, I ask that you email me at this address. We do have submission forms at our website, but because of tech and processes and time, it's just way simpler to just email me. So Brendan at yesonasandiego.org. I'll put that in the chat. I think that is my last slide. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brendan. And thank you to Megan as well. What 2 wonderful presentations to kind of set the stage for some more conversation as well. So thank you. I've had a couple of people just sending me questions in the chat. So we're going to start the Q&A period. So, students, anyone who's in attendance today, if you want to put something in the chat, you're welcome to do that. If you want to put your little blue hand up, if you prefer to do that, that's fine. Or, if things start to slow down a little bit with the questions, you're also just welcome to jump in if that's helpful. But we're going to benefit from the expertise of those who are in the room with us, the Zoom room with us for today. Brendan, I just got one quick question from an audience member about the internship and volunteer opportunity that you just mentioned on one of your last slides, just asking what the forms of outreach that people are working on actually look like. So I think they were asking whether it's calling people or what types of work interns or volunteers are doing.
Yeah, due to the pandemic, we are doing virtual outreach only. We're not asking people to meet in person on our behalf. Of course, we can't, if you do help, we can't stop you from doing what you want to do, but we will not ask you to do in-person things. So that results in pretty limited scope of things you can do. The two major ways are calling people, phone banking as it's known, and texting people. We have a text tool where you can text people that you don't know that are registered to vote. And that tool also allows you to text people you do know. It checks your contacts to see who you know is registered to vote, and you can text them, that you advocate for Measure A. So those are the two main ways, but we've been asking our interns and volunteers to think of ways how they can help us that is beyond that. So if people do get involved, we really ask them to leverage their skills and interests to further the effort. And I don't know all the social media ins and outs. So that's one way where I'm like, if you are an expert on social media, then create a cool way to engage people. If you're an artist and want to make a graphic or something like that, so there's many ways to get involved. I think the first step though is just getting in contact and seeing where people are at and what they're interested in.
That's super helpful. Thank you, Brendan. Elizabeth, from our audience, do you want to jump in with a question or a comment?
Yeah, I actually had two questions, if that's okay for Megan. So I was just wondering, what amount of the homeless population are aware of the resources that you guys offer? And if they're not aware, how do you guys make yourself known amongst the population?
That is an excellent question. So, I can't tell you exactly how many people know what we do or who we are. But I can tell you that most folks know who we are. I mean, we are one of the larger service providers. And so being around for a long time, being big it's nice, right? We have a huge facility downtown. It takes up 3 city blocks. So we do have that benefit. Can't give you an exact number, but I think a lot. But you're right. That is a huge barrier of just knowing where to access services and how to access services. And if you become homeless in East County, what is available to you and where and how do you get there? And so we do have an honorary degree. Yeah, Brian. So we do have a street outreach team. So we have a street health team, and then we have an outreach team, and then we work really closely with the with other service providers and with the HOT team from SDPD, so the homeless outreach team there. So everybody kind of works in tandem with each other, but we do have our own outreach team. So we are constantly walking. I mean, it's block walking. But instead of knocking on doors, we are going up to people and saying, hey, what do you need? What's your name? How are you? A lot of it is about establishing trust with those who are on the street. That can be a huge thing. So the same person showing up week after week after week just to check in on them and say, hey, and, ask about the cut on their leg and how that's healing and see what they need. And before we can finally get them into our program. So yeah, excellent question though. But yeah, it's a lot of work.
Thank you. And my second question, because I'm looking into being an elementary school teacher, and I know you said that you offer resources for children. So I was wondering if you guys have opportunities to volunteer or intern, or if that's something that you have to have certain certifications or training for.
That's a great question, and one that I can absolutely connect you with our therapeutic childcare manager. We do have quite a few students who come in and do their student teaching with us, who do their master's work with us. I just ran into, a gaggle of UCSD nurses the other day. So we have students on our campus constantly. It may be different now with COVID. We are, working with the city and the county to follow all the restrictions that schools and preschools are. So shoot me an email. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and then I will connect you with the person that could help you with that question. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for these great questions, Elizabeth. I have a couple more that have come in that are also kind of career related that people have sent to me. So maybe I'll share those for both of our speakers while we're talking about career stuff. A couple questions were kind of similar. So one person asked if you could go back and take one class in college that would be really helpful to the work that you do today. What would it be and why? And then a kind of related question was, what sort of advice would you give to students who might be interested in working in fields like yours? So maybe I'll just open it up for both of you to respond in whatever way feels appropriate.
Brendan, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So in college, I took a stress management course. And it was one of those easy A courses that you have to do. But I will tell you, I learned more from that class than almost any other I took in college. There are many times during the campaign where I just stop and take 5 deep breaths, and then I recenter myself and I get back on track. So that's not any way related to technical skills or networking or any expertise, but stress management is key, taking care of yourself. And then what was the second part?
The second part was, is there any advice that you would give to students who might be interested in working in a field like yours?
Read everything. That's how I was the exercise science major in undergrad. I have a business master's degree, and I do housing policy for a living. And I credit almost all of that to my reading in my spare time while I was in the Navy and getting out of the Navy. So read. That's my advice.
That's great advice. One class I wish I had taken in college is actually a finance course. So I was a communications major, pretty much because you didn't have to do math. No, I liked it for other reasons. But I wish I had taken a finance course. Fundraising is incredibly technical, and you need to know a lot of different terminology and what stock annuities are, and there's just a very technical aspect to it that I don't think I was very prepared for. So a finance course would have been mine. And then a piece of advice I would give is say yes to opportunities. I ended up doing and participating in a lot of different things when I was in college and right when I was outside college. And even now, I'm not that far into my career. I have many, many years ahead of me, and saying yes has just been really the best thing I could have done for myself. I've ended up doing some really odd jobs and some odd internships, but all of them have had some kind of impact on where I've been able to be and the people that I've met. And sometimes it's not obvious. It's years later before somebody reaches out to you and is like, hey, we worked together 6 years ago. I had this opportunity. And so saying yes and getting used to doing that now and being uncomfortable a little bit, but taking on that challenge, that's my biggest piece of advice.
Great. Thank you both so much for that. I wish I could benefit from your advice myself in some ways, from both of you. We just got another question in the chat that I can pose. And again, if anyone wants to ask these questions directly, you're welcome to do that. If you put your little blue hand up, I'll call on you, but I'll voice the ones that have been sent to me in the private chat. So one person asked, what are some techniques we should adopt when trying to convey the importance of helping those with insecurity, with those who might be less than empathetic? So maybe thinking here about either the stigma, or if you get pushback from people who maybe just don't understand the realities, what are some good techniques when trying to promote this type of work with others? Really good question.
I have something to contribute to that. So homelessness is we like to say here that everybody has an opinion. And I think if you read the comment section of any news post or UT article post on Facebook, you will see all of those opinions, good, bad, and ugly. And so when I do my work in the course of my work, and I say that, I work for Father Joe's and I work as a homeless services organization, I get a lot of oh, well, they're all drug addicts, or, oh, well, they just don't work hard enough. I mean, the two things I hear day in and day out. And one thing I've started doing is number one, sharing the slides that I just shared with you. In order to combat those myths, I can show you data, right? I can show you numbers. And then, so that's always one approach. And the other approach is what I call my emotional approach, which is thinking about our kiddos and the children that we serve at the village, and what that child then has done to deserve to be homeless or hasn't done. And that really trips people up too. They're like, oh, well, I didn't mean those kinds of homeless people. And you can kind of take two approaches. You can kill them with data, or, you know, you can kill them with kindness. And it's kind of one way or the other, and whatever works, whatever your, you know, personal approach is and whatever you feel comfortable doing. And then whatever that person might respond to a little bit better. But it really is just about, like, every day you just got to be ready to break down stigmas and barriers and really combat people's myths without blaming them or being mad at them, but just firmly correcting them that is not what that looks like.
Now, I actually was going to ask this question of Megan, so I'm glad someone, but your answer got me thinking. On an electoral issue, it's difficult because you have a very explicit thing you need to achieve, and it's kind of like, do what you got to do to win. But what the messaging that we've decided on has been drawing on community values, and that we're all in this together, and that we can solve this problem of homelessness together. That's based on a lot of different research and conversations and such. We'll see if it works. On a personal level, I always say everyone, no matter where they are at their lot in life, should have dignity. They're entitled to dignity because of people are not drug addicts. People are not homeless. They're people who are experiencing issues or have illnesses. If you are a stably housed person, there's no one at your front door checking to see if you drank alcohol that night. And if you did, you can't go into the home. And the same, and I'll add that to the Black Lives Matter. Just because you did something wrong does not mean that you deserve to die for it. So I kind of, on a personal level, this isn't really reflected in our electoral messaging. Human beings have dignity, and we should respect that.
Yeah, thank you both. And Brendan, your point about how this is a value that we all kind of need to share as a community is such an important one, in the sense that often people think about homelessness as only affecting those who are currently unsheltered, right? But in ways like this affects our whole community, right? I'm just thinking about, for example, like the pandemic. When you have a public health crisis, if you have some people that are more vulnerable, right, and you have some folks who can't get access to needed medical services or other things, it threatens our whole community here in San Diego, right? So that's just one example. There are many, many other ways that I think this touches our lives that people don't often think about too. So thank you for kind of raising that up in a way as well. Yeah. Good. Let's kind of pause and see if we have other questions from our audience. Or Austin, I don't know if you want to jump in with anything that's on your mind as well.
I definitely don't want to overstep, so I'll kind of pause to see if others have questions.
Yeah.
It's kind of a loosely formed question, but it's more rooted in sort of what's been happening in real time in 2020. But you know, when I, and again, this is kind of speaking more from just personal experiences and anecdotally, but, you know, you think about what's happened lately in California, the air quality impacts from the fires. You think about the health crisis from COVID-19, all the things that Kate just mentioned. Everything gets sort of exacerbated when you're experiencing these insecurities of homelessness. It's been hard enough just to breathe inside, let alone not having the luxury of being inside. I'm curious for Megan, for Brendan, for those of you all who are working with people experiencing these insecurities every day, what has that been like, and how is it differentiated from what it was even like in 2019 or 2018? Because the world today is just not the same that it was a year ago.
That's a great question. That's a big question. I mean, I don't know from Brendan's perspective, but it has changed everything for us. It's been a huge year, and it just seems like it's not stopping. It seems like there's just one thing after the next that is really having a disproportionate effect on the people that we serve. It can be really hard to be on the outside, and then you got to take that step back and say, well, if this is difficult for me, if this is a difficult situation for me, how is this for somebody who is experiencing all of these other issues on top of it? So without getting too far down in the weeds, we've had to change everything, like how we do everything at the village, just everything from the lunch line every day to how we check in on our families, right? So every single aspect of our work has been touched in some way. And then we've had to expand some of the services I mentioned very briefly. If we're in the convention center, operating out of the convention center and those shelter beds, trying to figure out what they want to close the convention center now because they, back to being a convention center, which is fine, but where are all those people going to go? I mean, it's just like the solutions have beget problems, which will beget more solutions. But yeah, the simple answer is just, it's changed everything. And we just have to have empathy for the people that we serve, for ourselves, for the people that are on the front lines being service providers, for the people that are not experiencing homelessness, but are close to it. It's just, we just have to be more empathetic and just come at it with an open heart and ready to work 3 times as hard, because there's 3 times as more issues facing us than there was this time last year. And this time last year, it felt daunting.
Yeah. Wow. I guess I'll say everything that's happened in 2020 underscores the importance of a affordable permanent home. I live downtown in an air-conditioned apartment. I was able to shut my windows and turn on my air when the air quality was terrible. When the pandemic happened, I lived by myself. I didn't have to see anyone or be near anyone, and I could sleep by myself, not at risk of transmitting the virus. I had somewhere to cook food. I don't need, I think the point is illustrated. 2020 has proven that everyone should have and deserves a permanent, affordable home.
Absolutely. Thank you all for those powerful responses. I did have one other question, but I want to create space for others to hop in there if you're sitting with anything. Well, in the meantime, this question is also kind of rooted in some of the context of the challenges that we're working through as a community, and it's really thinking about how the insecurities of homelessness and food insecurity intersect racially in America and in San Diego. So I know there were some slides up concerning data on both of your presentations, but when we think about some of the disproportionate racial effects in America to the Black and Brown communities and other QT BIPOC communities, I'm wondering if there is data that shows disproportionately how those communities are experiencing homelessness and food insecurity and other challenges in San Diego, and what does that kind of illustration look like right now?
I'll leave space for Brendan to answer this first if he wants to, or I can.
I think you're closer to it than I am. Yeah.
I mean, I think that it comes back, when we started, I won't even use the word started. We've been having this conversation nationally for a while, but I guess when it reached headlines over the summer, we had to take a step back here and have a conversation about, at the very heart of what we do, how race impacts really everything. We can look at the population of San Diego. We can look at the population of San Diego that is white, that is BIPOC, that is, other underserved communities or historically marginalized communities. It is not the same proportions as those who experience homelessness. The makeup of those experiencing homelessness consists of more people who are vulnerable, who are BIPOC, who fall into those communities that are being targeted and being vilified. And so it is not an equitable proportion. And I don't have the exact numbers on it because we avoid tracking by that in some ways. We have the data. It's not necessarily data we put into a nice little pie graph, but I can tell you just from being on the inside, you can see a difference. We know that communities of color are affected by homelessness, by extreme poverty, compounded by issues with law enforcement, compounded by issues with lack of access to services and lack of access to resources, and that begins early on and is cyclical, right? Like everything we know about poverty, you can just come back to it. It is cyclical, it is pervasive, it affects communities of color and people, you know, the queer community, the trans community, everything is exacerbated. So yeah, we had to put special care around those communities and special consideration around those communities, and not just right now emotionally, but always. We need tangible steps that can address the unique challenges of those communities in San Diego.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, but I did put in the chat an article to the Voice of San Diego did recently on Black homelessness in San Diego. So I would just point to that for more information.
It's a great article.
Yeah, I'm teaching a course this semester on kind of the history and the current status of homelessness in the US. It's a co-taught course with Mike from USD. And we were just talking with our students about this the other day. And I mean, to answer this question, if you look at just the point in time count data from the past couple of years, right? Which isn't a perfect measure of everyone who's unsheltered, but it gives us some idea, right? Black individuals make up about 6% of the population here in San Diego, but they also make up 22% of the, homeless population broadly, right? So that's not proportionate, right? That goes to what Megan is kind of, anecdotally observing in her work too, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's not just, it's not just the current moment, right? This is based off years of redlining history, years of systemic kind of exclusion of certain populations from having the right to own a home or right to get a mortgage or different things. So this is part of what our city is grappling with as we think about how to create affordable housing, which is what Measure A is trying to do. There are certain communities that have not historically had access to affordable housing or even a right to own a home. So thanks for lifting that up, Austin, because this is such a critical part of our campus community, discussions right now that I'm glad you brought that to the fore.
Well, those were the last of my questions. I don't know how we're doing on time just yet, Kate, but
I think we're nearly out of time. So let's just open it up and see, is there anyone who has one last question that they would like to ask our speakers for today? And if not, we'll just share a few kind of resources to wrap up for today. This has been a really wonderful session. Good. All right, well, I'm not seeing anyone jumping in. You do have the contact info though for both of our presenters, which is awesome. So if you want to get involved, if you want to reach out to them, you know how to do that. We will also share the recording with all of you of today's session if you want to go back and look at it at any point in time. But just a reminder also, we have these wonderful partners off campus who are great, who do such meaningful work in the community. And there are also opportunities on campus for you to get involved with this too, right? So the group I mentioned at the start, the Urgent Challenges Collective, we support student research projects, we support different advocacy initiatives, we support teaching projects for faculty. So if you are looking for a way to kind of plug into this network at USD also, please know that we are one group that you can reach out to. The Mulvaney Center obviously has great connections to other orgs and other partners across the city who work on these issues and others. So, Austin and I or anyone from our teams are also happy to interface with anyone who's interested in these topics. Austin, was there anything else that you wanted to say at the end here?
I think you did a great job closing this out. I just want to, kind of echo gratitude to Brendan, to Megan, to the organizations that you represent. There's a lot on the ballot, unintended this year. And so I feel like I learned a lot just from today's conversation. And, aside from you all's efforts, just thank you to all the students that took the time to be here and to join us on this Friday. I think I can assume that you obviously care a lot about some of these challenges ahead of us. So I appreciate your time and energy today.